everybody. I'm come to talk about people in trees. I thought I would tell all the youngsters about how we used to live in the trees in the 1900s. So, I want to cast everyone's mind back to a magical time, a time when we genuinely had a universal basic income in the form of the dole and housing benefit. A time when you could see a dentist. The time when you could live in an empty property, and the time when you could get a university education without getting £60,000 in debt, which is what I was doing in Brighton in the very early 1990s. Like I mention it about that effectively we had a universal basic income because it's kind of like, it's all very well just rocking up and going, oh yeah, we did all these exciting protests. But the reason why we could do all these exciting protests is because we had the economic freedom to be able to go there. Oh yeah, I didn't mention single parents. Single parents could just like get a flat and then have enough money to not only feed their child, but also run a vehicle. It was like a magical time of freedom. And once we have a universal basic income again, then we will then have the freedom to be able to defend the rights to have a universal basic income. See, simples. We'll just solve it like that. I like a lot of the 1990s are a little bit of a blur for me, but fortunately, I wrote it all down in a book. This is not an author talk because you cannot buy this book, because I printed up 2,000 of them and then I spent all the money on chips and beer and a truck that I drove to Hungary, and then there was never print run, so it's just like this like mythical item. But I had a read of it the other day and I thought it's quite good actually. So I'm going to give you soothing bedtime stories from the roads protests, accompanied by slightly blurry visuals that you have to squint to see, but I feel that's kind of like what the time was like. How can it be illegal to dance? Learning to dance was the first really uninhibited thing I did. Head back, arms up, hair plastered to my neck, one part of a bigger thing, not a group, a mass of slippery, sticky, panting madness. In the dark, the beat got louder, legs and arms moved faster, and sometimes it rained and we didn't care as our thumping feet sounded as loud as the bass bins, as loud as the blood pulsing in our heads. A cool breeze on my face, gazing out at dawn over the downs as seagulls swooped and the music glided into another effortlessly fluffy, bouncy tune. Pale rays of sunlight on the faces of the people around me. Dawn on ancient hill forts. Dawn on white breakers crashing and sucking pebble beaches. Dawn on the roofs of crumbling factories, where the buddleia on the rubble and the shopping trolley seemed like the loveliest thing I'd ever seen. Donations only. No uniformed thugs on the door to stick their hands on your tits. No £15 entrance fees and £2 bottles of water. No queuing for flooded toilets where the water had just been turned off in the taps. Just hundreds of people having a good time. The Criminal Justice Bill came as a bit of a shock to me. Section 63, powers to remove persons attending or preparing for a rave. This section applies to a gathering of the land of 100 or more persons where amplified music is played during the night. For this purpose, music consists of sound wholly or predominantly characterised by the emission of a succession of repetitive beats. I first read about it in the New Statesman, I think, with a sense of outraged incomprehension. Bless me, I had to read about it in a magazine because we didn't have Google. It wasn't just dancing, there was so much more. Police powers were extended to allow them to stop and search, take DNA samples. Police, not magistrates, were to set bail conditions after arrest. The right to silence was abolished, and how that is supposed to prevent miscarriages of justice is anyone's guess. Squatters, travellers, power to direct unauthorised campers to leave land. But there was more. It was now illegal to protest against these changes or anything else. Section 70, prohibiting trespassery assemblies. A person commits the offence of aggravated trespass if he, I should have been all right actually, if he trespasses on land in relation to any lawful activity which persons are engaging in or about to engage in, it becomes a criminal act to protest directly. 3 months in prison for trying to stop a road which is itself a crime against the environment. 2.5 grand fine for sabotaging the gentlemanly bloodlust of a load of upper-class twits. It seemed very simple to me as I watched the bill pass through Parliament without opposition. If the law is wrong, then break it. But this is the courthouse squat in Brighton, and this is the point when I became politically active because a bunch of people decided to break into the old magistrates' court, which was empty, and occupy it, and then it became a temporary autonomous zone. And it took me about 2 weeks to pluck up the courage to go in there and find all the cool people. And as part of the process of getting to know the cool people, I discovered that probably the most single empowering thing about getting involved in activism is that they had assumed I was a cool person. And I had thought they were all cool people. And it's actually like spiders, where the spider is more scared of you than you are scared of the spider. So, like, we're all spiders spinning some little webs. This was the first cartoon that I drew at the time, which was probably a bit more radical in the days when every single image of a woman that I saw reflected in the media was on the verge of starvation. And it inspired me to do a cartoon called Good Memories, which was about my time at Greenham Common as a kid, which my mum had schlepped me along to women's peace protests, even though, I mean, it was like the one tiny radical tinge of my childhood. Because basically, I grew up in Surrey and I had piano lessons. And as a cartoonist, that's a massive handicap, because I did not have any terrible traumatic events, which I could not then subsequently recycle into a My Tragic Childhood story. So, but yeah, I did manage to get a little bit of protest history in there. So I drew this cartoon, and the picture on the right, I spent all day drawing that picture of a fence. I also got involved with this thing called Snooze, which was a weekly free news sheet that we used to print out or photocopy out at the offices that were run by the Levellers and distribute. I think we used to photocopy it at the unemployed centre. It was great anyway. We used to distribute this free news sheet, and we used to send it to prisoners for free as well. And there was like a never-ending supply of young, active hippies always up for just doing a bit of activism and creating the snooze and distributing it. And we used to go to the pub and we used to read it. And me and Gibby used to, that's not me, that's Gail, but me and Gibby used to sit in the New Kensington pub every Wednesday evening and read the snooze aloud, wearing bow ties made out of J-cloth, and I've never really worked out why we did that. So the snooze got assembled into a book, the first 50 issues of it, that I put a load of cartoons in and didn't think very much about it. And then I started getting involved in direct action through the snooze posse of people. We then went up to the Pollock Free State, and I just asked Google what that was. It gave me an AI overview, which is not hugely inaccurate. We took this convoy of cars and we drove it up to the M77 motorway in Glasgow and met to Pollock with love. There we go. That was a specific campaign that involved a convoy of cars travelling to the protest site. Thanks, AI. I don't have any photos of the cars, but we did stop at Stanworth on the way. It's a bit tricky to see, isn't it? But there's lots of trees. You can't really see how high up you are there. That's a really nice picture. I didn't take the photos. These are all by Andrew Tester. There's Larch, and I included the picture of Larch because he just went to prison for Just Stop Oil protests for 4 years, and now all his tweets are full of prison reform. Good man. I'm going to stop and read the bit about Stanworth. The M65 extension, a motorway, a campaign. M11ers helped to kick off the direct action with the occupation of Cinderpath Woods in May 1994. Protesters were evicted from there for sites in Cuerden Valley and Bamber Bridge before they moved into Stanworth Valley in August. Stanworth was magical. They called it a cosmic pixie tree village, and they just didn't care. Layla. I loved it totally, but I just got into it all then. It was really small to start with. 9 of us moved down there together, and then a couple of weeks later more people came. All winter there was about 15 of us, maybe a few more, till spring, and then loads of people turned up and built loads of tree houses. But it rained all the time, and you didn't have any burners. Yeah, but the tree houses were all really small, so they heated up quickly, and they were all lined with blankets. A few people lived on the ground, but most people lived in the trees because it was much easier if you had a tree house. Basically, we didn't come out of the trees hardly ever, except to go to the toilet, and that was it. Ate up there, visited each other. Sounds like a proper village. It was. You ate lots of porridge? Yeah, and lots of lentils. Neil. Very muddy, almost entirely sky-based because the ground was just too fucking muddy. We stayed in the trees all the time, most of us. Nice trees? Yeah, nice as trees go. Big. See any pixies or fairies? Nah, that's for hippies. Ollie. Autumn hit, and that was really, really, really hardcore weather. Lancashire is in rain cloud vortex, and we're in the bottom of a valley with a river in it. It pissed down. The word quag, short for quagmire, was coined at Stanworth. Steph. There were bits of quag that nobody knew how deep they were. I've fallen in as far as my thighs before. Dave. When I first got there were people I didn't meet for weeks. They were up in the trees and I was scared of heights, and I refused to go up in a tree for the first week or so. I said, I'm not going up there, no way. Eventually, somebody taught me how to press a cup of rope and abseil, and I just totally got into it then. My desire to live in a tree overwhelmed my fear. So, Stanworth Valley was muddy, and you didn't have any burners in your tree houses, and you were wet for months on end. Gremlin. Yeah, but we were hard. And you had to eat porridge for breakfast. Gremlin. Every day, and donga slop, which was basically Swedes and cabbage, and no flavourings, boiled to a grey mush, normally by Becky or Busker Paul. Then we used to sit round the fire pit, and when their backs were turned, we'd flick curry powder or stock cubes in. Roy. That were way back when. Gremlin. In the good old days. The even better old days. Roy, we can make porridge now. Gremlin, we've got loads of oats here. Roy, we've got no sugar or anything to go on it. Gremlin, we used to have mud on our porridge at Stanworth. So we went to Stanworth, we went to the M77, and that was really a good and different kind of protest because it was on the edge of... They'd done what they always fucking do, is they're building a new road or a high-speed rail link, and they drive it through the working class area. They don't fucking get it. The Tories keep it all out off their patch, and there's a big swerve round someone's expensive constituency and then straight through the playing fields of the local kids. And I think that the land on the M77 was built on had been bequeathed to the children of Glasgow in perpetuity, and then they were building a motorway on it. And at the same time, Grange Hill was running a children's TV storyline about roads protesting, which meant all the kids were specifically inspired to come and check out their local roads protests. So we had some class in this one, which was a good sort of another angle into protesting. We drove a load of cars there and we set them on fire, and we kind of made a car henge out of them, like dug some holes by hand and then just like pushed the noses of them into, and one of them fell backwards and nearly squashed everyone, and then we got them on the end and then we set fire to them because, I mean, whatever you think about the environment, they were going to get set fire to at some point anyway, so we thought we might as well do it ourselves. So I did some cartoons about that. I did a day of like going off to Salisbury Hill and getting involved in digger diving a little bit. And then I went to the Glastonbury Festival in 1995, and then I left home and I never went back. And I went to Cellar anti-open cast mine protest. It was after the Glastonbury Festival in the summer of 1995, and I wasn't going back home. We had a nightmare hitch from Pilton, which involved sleeping by a motorway flyover in Bristol, and then a dream hitch from Neath when a friendly man with a tiny car piled us all on top of his tat and drove us straight to the site. From the motorway to Gleneath to Cumgrach, a cluster of red brick houses with their fronts on the streets but with gardens which stretch back with a countryside sense of space. Across the stone chip expanses of the motorway extension, under construction, left at the roundabout, right up the road, climbing up and up, people wave from their doorsteps, up and up past secluded retirement cottages with pristine lawns and technicolor flower beds, up and down and up, and the road gets narrower and the ancient hedges threaten to touch overhead. Then some dusty benders and a flat-baked earth space where the diggers were before they were stopped. A welcome board with leaflets that are even now beginning to disintegrate. Lots and lots of people. Local children with painted faces swinging on the ropes from the trees. Clusters of Cumgrach residents in pale, clean clothes bringing bags and bags of tins of beans and sausages and soap and kitchen paper, politely refusing muddy cups of tea. I looked with a kind of awe at the sunburned, dirt-streaked residents of the camp, and I said to someone by way of introduction, "I've just got here today." And he said, "So have I." Kel and I chose a little domed oak tree that leaned out into the stream bed. It wasn't more than 35 feet tall. I couldn't climb it at first and clung to the trunk, roping my harness to the branches with shaky hands. Kel stood on a branch above me going, "Look, it's easy." And since she is 6 inches shorter than me, I was gradually convinced. A month later, I could chin up it in the pitch black of no moon in the rain without slipping, drunk on white cider. We built a tree house. Lots of other people helped. The days were filled with deep yellow sunshine and cool green leaves. The nights had fires and drums and singing. A week went by. I was in love with Sella. This was my first taste of a real community, being bonded in one purpose. Everything was shared. Spliffs and cider travelled the campfire circles. I had no money, but I never went without, and then I had money, and it was spent on everybody and gone, and I never had to worry. We slept together in tangles of bodies in benders. We swam naked in the lake and had mud fights, more fires, more drums, more singing. Mark, it was a beautiful place. Many a fucking enjoyable summer day was spent there, running about naked in the black mountains, painting ourselves with purple bird shit. Not that I'm hippie or anything. A tree is the biggest living thing you'll ever see, and strange as it may seem, you can feel the life of it when you put your hand to its trunk. I didn't think of this when I sat up in the mossy little branches of my tree, when it swayed when the wind gusted, when I lay on my belly and peered idly out of my treehouse at the stream below. But later, when I revisited Sella, I would skip up my tree and a strange peace would descend upon me. Cosmic, huh? Olivia. For a while, when it was summer, the sun was rising at a certain angle. My tree house wasn't totally covered, so the sun was rising and I would get woken up by the first ray of sun on my face. And I only had a little bit of transparent plastic on top, so I could see the moon going all the way round. I watched so many moons from the top of my tree. It was so amazing. Then gradually as autumn came and winter came, it got more covered until it was a proper bender on a tree, but for at least 4 or 5 months it was a couple of bender poles and a bit of plastic on top, which was really living outside. Still now, it's a long time ago now, you know. When I can't sleep at night, I close my eyes and then I pretend to be in my treehouse at Sella, and I sleep then. I have each little branch still in my memory. Another thing, climbing a tree every night, every morning, every afternoon, and every other fucking time you need some stupid piece of tat that you left all the way up there, makes you beautifully, joyously agile and strong. Balance, stretch, turn, reach, swing, leap, clamber higher and higher. The birds are beneath you, move to the sky. I remember being really dirty and really fit and really free and feeling really mad all over my body, physically fit from climbing, I think. Maybe. Tony. Before Celtic Energy, that's the name of the fucking mining company, it was called Celtic Energy, how fucking dare they? Before Celtic Energy grabbed it, the land was owned by a woman who just left it to go wherever it went, and I don't think anyone had actually been there for a long time before we got there. That place, I think it had more magical energy than anywhere I've been. I get this feeling sometimes when I'm walking in places like that, like an exhilarating cold wind blows through you. It gives you loads of energy, it makes you jump about, like an ancient feeling. Cold and barren maybe, but not desolate. I had a bit of tree above my bed for a while and had to move it because every night I would dream myself back in my copse, the water trickling under the tree. So I did some cartoons about this because newspapers, they sort of like to bang on about the bit where you fight the bailiffs, with a raggle-taggle army of protesters play a game of cat and mouse with the bailiffs and the diggers are moving in. And they talk about eco-warriors and renter mob and all. I fucking wish, like, if only we were getting paid. So I decided to take the piss out of the phrase eco-warrior. Here's an eco-warrior displaying incredible bravery and daring by having a cup of tea. This eco-warrior is daringly and bravely sleeping in the name of planetary salvation, and so is his dog. Other acts of courage which eco-warriors participate in include eating veggie slop, getting pissed. This is my all-time favourite picture that I've ever drawn in my life. It says on the little arrow, made from the finest culinary apples, which is what it said I noticed the first time I bought a 3-litre bottle of Pulse cider. The first and last time I bought a 3-litre bottle of Pulse cider, I'd hand it around the fire pit and everyone was like, no, not Pulse. And that was me just like one short 24 hours later. Anyway, yeah. Avoiding midges. I only built a treehouse to get away from them. This cartoon is intended to show that the brave eco-warrior is a sad media stereotype invented to prevent the news consumers from identifying with on-the-case individuals. Of course, eco-warriors should not be confused with pixies who are real and magical and really do live in the woods. Which is only a joke that makes sense if you understand that pixieing is the term that we used for involving active acts of sabotage against diggers and other acts of industrial, Okay, I've included this little cartoon called Cosmic Hitching because I did a lot of hitching at this point in my life. Hitching is a form of meditation, you know. The dreary swish of wheels on tarmac, the continual glint of sun from passing vehicles, rising trails of exhaust floating away to take their place in the greater atmospheric smog, and around the mind of the hitcher passes the single word, bollocks. And I also included this cartoon about being really fucking dirty. Now new Ultra Crusty Tan gives me complete UV protection. In a handy self-applying formula, its twin components of mud and engine oil combine to visibly reduce the appearance of fine lines and ageing. Why bother taking 2 bottles into the shower? I just go. The reason why I was doing so much hitching is because I technically lived at Cellar Roads Protest, but I also hang out a lot at Fairmile Roads Protest. I had a really different experience turning up at Fairmile because I rocked up there and people went, "Oh, you're the person who does the cartoons." They said, come in, which means I didn't get to go and hang out at Trollham and Alicum, which were the other 2 camps along the route of the A30. And the reason why those camps had been set up was because those people had turned up to Fairmile and they're going, "Who the fuck are you?" So all those people that got fucked off Fairmile went and formed these other camps, and they were really cool camps too. Anyway, this is the Newbury Bypass. The Newbury Bypass, 9-mile road which manages to pass 3 times through North Wessex Down area of outstanding natural beauty, obliterate 3 sites of special scientific interest, an ancient Stone Age settlement, 11 other archaeological sites, and 2 perfectly preserved Civil War battlefields, as well as destroying the habitats of kingfishers, nightjars, hobbies, bats, and dormice, all protected species, and one of the last remaining colonies of the Desmolin whorl snail. And polluting the River Lambourne, at the time, one of the cleanest in the country. That is because the whole thing runs through woodland. To build it means chopping down an estimated 10,000 trees. Newbury already has a bypass, but it's slowed down by 5 roundabouts where it skirts the town. Sainsbury's has built a huge superstore on the busiest roundabout, which means that traffic lights are installed and the road slowly becomes a chugging, fumy car park. Should we sort out the superstore, or put tunnels under the roundabout, or perhaps invest in public transport? No, let's destroy some ancient forest for a road that will form part of the new network of Euro routes, in this case connecting Glasgow to northern Spain. The 1995 review of the Newbury Bypass calculated that 2 minutes would be saved on an off-peak journey times. The Highways Agency then stated that we don't just build roads, we save time. We don't just build roads to save time. We estimate the road will save 28 lives over a 30-year period. Many more than 28 lives were risked in its construction. How was Newbury for you then, Dan? Psychotic, really. Oh, this is the mothership, man. This is Kennet Camp. But the big one is the mothership. That is... There's room for one more in the mothership. Indeed. Here is my cartoon of the mothership. It has, at this point, 25 damp waterproofs, 25 dirty sleeping bags, 25 rather similar rucksacks, 25 pairs of identically muddy boots, and some dishevelled kitchen things in it, and a very smoky wood burner made out of an oil drum. But 25 is not the maximum number of people that slept in the mothership. How many people slept in the mothership? 39. Yeah. Every time you ask that question for someone who was at the mothership, they'll give you a bigger number. So... Newbury. So I went to Newbury. I spent the rainy November there at Skyward Camp trying of all things to fix a crappy little van in the mud with my head in little pieces as only a disastrous love affair can leave it. I like looking back on my words. I put the word disastrous love affair instead of domestic violence, but there you fucking go. Then if we don't talk about these things. I did talk about these things. Nobody fucking responded. I think we're a bit better at this shit these days. Then in January, my van was kind of working and I was on my way back to Cellar and I stopped in at Newbury at the Chase camp. Oh, I didn't really show you all the camps. Like, all the camps are running down this. You can see all the words, yeah? They're the route of the thing. And the camps go Maryhare, Gotan, Snelsmore, Skyward, Castlewood, Bagnall, Bagnall Lane, Middle Lake, Granny Ash, Rickety Bridge, Camelot, Kennet, that's where the mothership is, Risler Bridge, Sheepditch, Redding's Copse, Ghost Train, The Chase, that's where I used to hang out. And then there was this whole load at the bottom that were all made once they started clear cutting from the south of the route upwards, which went Birthday Party, Seaside, Bubblebrook, Snash Squad, Manic Shah, Heartbreak Hotel, Horseshoe, Fluff Central, Tot Hill, and then PP3 is the vehicle camp off to the side. Anyway, so I stopped in at the Chase, another camp along the route, and then it was really happening. Security had been hired and they were living in barracks down the road. The tribe gathered with hugs and shouts and hellos, and we were all sleeping in tiny benders together again and getting up at 6 a.m. to race the security to the trees. This cheered me up quite a lot, the love of good friends being better than the love of crap men. Besides, what was happening each day behind the thin yellow lines was so incredibly shit that it put a little personal heartache into perspective. What happened basically was that every morning anything up to 1,600 security guards would be driven in coaches from some strange security bunkers to some point along the 9-mile route. 1,600 men in day-glow yellow. And that's quite an army. And some of them were soldiers on special leave, as they said. People would track them in fast cars and we'd listen nervously to our CB radios. Get us, we had CB radios. Oh, to find out which way they were headed. The Chase was at the south end of the route, and sometimes when they were going north, I'd go back to bed. But then, I'm a slack fucker. Most of my friends were burning the candle at both ends and in the middle as well. Oh my God, they're heading for Penwood, Tot Hill, Redding's Copse. A mad scramble to race them to their destination. You had to get there before the lines were properly assembled, as any later attempts to charge them would mean an arrest for aggravated trespass. They weren't interested in the camps themselves, as possession orders hadn't been granted for them yet. I haven't actually explained this. The legal mechanism that we were using to create the roads protest camps were that if you live in a tree, it's your residence. And then in order to evict the tree house, they would have to apply for possession to evict you from your home. It was a legal precedent that was set on the M11 with the sweet chestnut tree, which I do talk about in my book, that you could read if it hadn't been out of print for 25 years. And I don't think this would probably apply these days, because I'm pretty sure people have tried to set up protest camps like in the last 15 years. And
well, it's using the residential squatting, which Cameron got rid of.
Right, so we were using the laws on residential squatting, which were got rid of by the Tories. So it was like some sweet summer children that we were. Anyway, but they weren't trying to clear the camps, as the possession orders hadn't been granted for them. They were just clearing the land between the camps of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of trees. Sit in a tree in the January cold without food or water as often as not, while all these trees are felled around you in a sickening frenzy by the chainsaw gangs. Then at night, stick up Section 6s, that's the legal squatting thing, and then squat the land that you'd saved. Build walkways and platforms by the dim light of head torches. Stumble with flasks of strong coffee through land that had been familiar until the chainsaw men turned it horizontal. God, the route was so huge, and they were coming for it all at once. Olivia, sometimes I felt we're really mad, hardcore like fuck. I can't believe we are in here in the winter and snow and rain and the mud. We managed to carry on and do it every day. Nikki, there were loads of people who overdid it a bit. Somehow I managed to get by without collapsing and giving myself a hernia, but I did overdo it for sure and got loads of sleep deprivation. And it was quite a trip going around with these big bug eyes and my body somewhere behind me, with my head thinking I was really on the case and could do anything while my feet stumbled around in the mud. It was a shame. I mean, it seemed like the thing to do at the time, but everyone got such a mission about it. We could have been more sensible and more into coziness. The route was huge and they were all coming for it at once, but lots and lots of other people were coming there too. The press are fickle in their affections, but this was January, a dull time of year, and Newbury was only a short blat away from journalistic headquarters in London. With saturation media coverage, hundreds of people headed for the protest. Olivia, every time you meet someone new, there was so much knowledge and inspiration, so many different people from different backgrounds coming together. If there'd never been a road building security operation on this scale before, it was because they had never encountered this amount of opposition. And we did change Tory government road building policy with this act. There was God, I've got some statistics at the front. There were many billions of pounds of roads that were planned, which were absolutely decimated as a result of the public opposition. Trolley. I remember the first day it kicked off, walking to town, all of us Kennet posse, seeing all these cars full of protesters, people that were coming because they'd seen it on the news. It's like, yeah, the Clock Tower pub at happy hour. It was £1 a pint. Wow, that dates it, man. £1 a pint. It was buzzing. Loads of amazing people coming together and having a party. Sod them chopping down trees. I couldn't get much consolation from the new people that were constantly turning up. I wanted to include them and would make introductions and explanations, but then I would forget their names, and sometimes it would take a while to register what I'd seen. Like that day in Penwood when they moved the security cordon, and I happened for once to be in the right place to climb a tree that was then behind the lines. There were 3 chainsaw operators working at the same time, as quick as they could, laying the trunks down one on top of another like a very sick game of spillikins. Licensed chainsaw operators are supposed to ensure that no other person is standing within an area twice the height of the tree that is being felled, but these rules were being flouted, and the health and safety executive seemed strangely unconcerned. They would slash at the trunks, and then they'd sometimes push them a last little bit, 2 men leaning on the trunk to help it fall, then onto the next. I was watching them blankly at the base of a tree not 10 yards away from mine, and I watched the trunk start moving backwards towards them the wrong way. It fell the wrong way. It fell onto a tree with somebody in it. I saw the white face of the man in the tree who it so narrowly missed. I thought it was the face of a dead man. Later I saw it was Jem. The tree bounced from there onto the line of security guards, but before it reached them, it was stopped by the thin blue rope of a walkway that had just been ribbed up. It took the security a second to look up and see it and leg it away in panic. The rope stretched perilously. Matt was standing on the other end of it. No harness. He would fall if it was broke, and he was shouting his head off. All the people on the ground were shouting and screaming too. Jim didn't look like he could speak. So there's my battle story. But worse were the days when the coaches would pull up and discharge their yellow armies, and I wouldn't get there in time, or I'd run the wrong way in panic. All those beautiful alder trees around the chase, they'd made such slender, fragile winter patterns against the sky. I discovered that alderwood is bright orange when it is cut. So I did some cartoons. I did them for The Guardian. They're all in this book that you can't read. I managed to get the phrase, as the evil planet-trashing forces of Babylon smashed their way through our native countryside, into the Guardian newspaper, which I was very pleased about. And then I put them together in this book, which I published myself, and I was dysfunctionally alcoholic, and didn't actually do any of the things you're meant to do with a book. I think I managed to register the ISBN, but that was about it. And then I just had these loads of copies of books in a squat in London, and some of them in my granny's loft. And then people would say, oh, I took a box of your books up to Glasgow Social Centre, and I'd be like, oh, thanks, you owe me 180 quid now. Never mind. So they got very chaotically distributed, and they exist as this weird, rare unicorn of the roads protests. I went on... the time check wasn't bad, actually. I went on to do other books. I've done one about how to have a baby, and one about how to feed a baby, and one about... then I hit my stride. I really love doing historical graphic biography. So I did a book in 2015 called Red Rosa, which is about Rosa Luxemburg, who I knew nothing about at the point when I said, yes, I'd like to write your book about, and she's fucking awesome. And then I did a book called Threads from the Refugee Crisis, which is what happened is loads of my friends spent loads of time going over to Calais and really sorting out the jungle refugee camp and putting loads of time in and connecting with people and living out there and doing loads of really good things and using their background in festival logistics to actively help loads of people. And what I did was I went there for 2 weeks, came back and spent a year drawing a book about it. And I've recently done, God, you can't see the picture properly. I've recently done a book called Patchwork, a graphic biography of Jane Austen, which is coming out in October and I'm super excited about. So I'm basically only standing here talking about Rhodes protests so I can all persuade you all to read my book about the Regency, because it's great. Like, you can't really see her. There she is. Okay, so that was my book. Talk. That was my talk that I created to do at Glastonbury. And then I thought, I'll keep it shortish, and then I'll just tell everyone the really long, rambling story about how I got into the Glastonbury Festival in 1998. Thanks, memory over there. Which was the first time I ever met the man that I went on to marry and have children with, but like many years later. Anyway, but this time I was just like, so we were at Glastonbury, right? And then Palestine Action has been prescribed as a terrorist organisation. And we were camping with people from Palestine Action. And we were wearing Palestine Action T-shirts. And then I was then away, and then it was all over the media. And then someone said, so Palestine Action is being prescribed under the Terrorism Act 2000. And I went, oh, I remember the Terrorism Act 2000. And then I realised that 25 fucking years ago, I drew a cartoon about the Terrorism Act 2000. So instead of taking questions or doing a rambly talk about how I got into the Glastonbury Festival that is not relevant in any way, I thought I would just show you a little bit of my Terrorism Act cartoon. Annoyingly, yeah, I had these printed out, and like, it must have been about 3 years ago. I was like, I don't know why I've got these old comics printed out. I'm not going to do anything with those. Recycled the bloody lot. And then I'm like, shit, man. Okay, so simple questions, Mr. Straw. This is so fucking resonant because the first picture in the cartoon is like, one of these inspires terror in people, Mr. Straw. Can you tell which? Yes, of course. The one on the right, which is a fighter jet bombing innocent civilians, is a terrorist. The one on the left, which is a badly drawn picture of a woman disarming a jet with a hammer. Oh, yeah, I'm not very good at rights and left. The one on one side... The one on the other side is a terrorist. So, yeah, Terrorism Act 2000. I read the Terrorism Act 2000 and I found all these little nuggets of information in it. Terrorism means the use or threat of purpose advancing a political, religious or ideological course of action which involves serious violence against any person or property. So property damage is terrorism under the Terrorism Act. So what's in store? Let us follow the theoretical case of Rosemary Morley, birdwatcher, who's been monitoring the effects of chemical spills from the local Toxico factory on her local beach. After a series of successful prosecutions result in only ineffectual fines, she forms the group Friends of Metathon Bay with the aim of taking accountable non-violent direct action against the corporation. Or in a different league, what about Ayo Adeji, who has seen his tribal people suffer enslavement, sterilisation and massacre and ultimately dispossession. With his charismatic preaching on the city streets, he finds himself the leader of a cross-cultural resistance determined to fight back. Because I did all this before the internet. I phoned the Nigerian embassy and asked them for a good name for just like a generic Nigerian guy. Rosemary Morley sets out late one night with considerable quantities of steel mesh and waterproof cement. She successfully blocks Toxico's outflow pipe and immediately telephones the local police station to inform them of her crime. Well, Miss Morley, were your crime motivated by simple greed, revenge or misguided passion, I would happily recommend a sentence of weeks. But it appears that you have an ideological justification for your action. This clearly meets the terms of serious violence against property under the Prevention of Terrorism Act. And this is the point. If you're going to commit criminal damage for an ideological reason, there are laws. There are laws to prosecute you for criminal damage. Not only have they rigged the jury system so that people on Just Stop Oil protests have been going up in front of the courts who have been unable to explain to the courts why they are doing what they are doing, now they can also introduce these, start using these sweeping terrorism proscriptions, which means that there's a completely different set of rules applied to what you do and the punishment that it entails. Appalled at the severity of the damage, fresh from lunch with the Toxico managing director, the Secretary of State decides to ban Friends of Netherthong Bay as a terrorist organisation. The Netherthongians mount a legal challenge, but the members of the Appeals Commission, who may or may not be major Toxico shareholders, exclude them and their lawyers from the appeal hearing. You can do that. The Commission upholds the ban without giving a reason why. They can do that. This came in under a Labour government. Jack Straw is a Labour Home Secretary. All the members of the group are convicted of membership offences and are sentenced to 10 years in prison. Rosemary Morley, guilty of directing their activity, gets life. Ayo Adeji lives far away in a country where human rights abuses are commonplace. Things like that could never happen here. Ayo dies in prison from his wounds. His wife and sons are shot by masked gunmen. His daughter flees to England, where only after 14 months in detention her claim for asylum is allowed. Delapo vows to continue her father's struggle. Unfortunately, the UK government proves unwilling to accept their valuable trade partner, and Delapo's organisation is banned. So this is interesting. Membership under the Terrorism Act contains a clause of negative proof. That means you have to prove that you're effectively guilty until proven innocent. You have to prove that you have no further contact with the terrorist organisation or its aims. So it's like backwards to the way that it's meant to be. It's a defence for a person charged under this subsection to prove that he's not taken part in any activities of organisation. What? The Home Secretary can't just silence ideological struggle like that. Sympathisers organise a meeting in support and are promptly arrested for contravening sections 11 of the Terrorism Act. Tut tut. Clearly guilty of supporting... Mrs. Travail is clearly guilty of supporting her fellow residents, while Mr. Hoot blatantly intended to speak at the same meeting. And under the definition, a meeting is any three people, whether or not the public are omitted. Now, given that, action taken for the purposes of terrorism includes action taken for the benefits of the banned organisation. So, as the number of sympathisers with our heroes grows, so a greater and greater proportion of the population become terrorists. And this is what we're seeing now, with people standing up and holding signs that says, I support Palestine action. This is this legislation in effect. And therefore, when a spontaneous demonstration occurs a week later and the police decide to exercise their new power of declaring a cordon around the protesters to disperse them, they do it with the sole aim of eradicating the evil of terrorism in their midst. Not because it's a useful tool for suppressing the right to free assembly. Not that at all. The Friends of Netherthong Bay continues to function, to pay court costs, provide prisoner support, and unwisely, in accordance with Rosemary Morley's statement from her prison cell, we shall not rest in our attacks on Toxico until each fluffy downy chick that hatches in Netherthong Bay can grow free, unpolluted and strong, and fly, fly, fly. Yeah, so the early supermarket collections were rather unsuccessful. So basically, collecting money on behalf of a terrorist organisation is then, terrorism. And now it is time for the police to use more new powers to amass low-level intelligence on the entire UK population. This is where you should get worried, because you don't have to be a member of a banned organisation for the police to investigate you. You don't have to have committed a criminal offence or intend to. The police can investigate you anyway in case you might be doing something that should be banned. And if they really want to dig the dirt, they can come into your home to find something to arrest you for. And in this case, you have to then prove that the article in possession is not connected to preparation. So you see what you do? You get a really wide definition of terrorism, and then anything that is associated, then you have this negative proof clause whereby police can come in and check out. So the court may assume that you possess the article unless you prove that you do not know of its presence or that you have no control over it. So it's again this negative proof clause. What about these bolt croppers, Mrs. Grundlethorne? Oh, I see that you've made a note of the place and time where your local MP holds his surgery. We've got you now, oh so innocent seeming Grammy. You're looking at a 10-year stretch in porridge. You may not advocate any kind of ideologically motivated activism. You may not lend your support to those who do, but do you possess information that a terrorist might find useful? Hang on, what about this cartoon? What about that? Unfortunately, at this point, this cartoon appears to have exploded under the pressure of its own paranoia. And at the point when I drew this cartoon, it did seem genuinely paranoid. because there was not any effort by the Labour government under Jack Straw to prescribe any terrorist organisations. But lo and behold, 25 years later, once Palestine Action is making concerted and ideologically motivated and effective non-violent direct action and property damage against targets, the raising awareness of the complicity of firms like Elbit in genocide in Gaza, the legislation was there. And the definition was right. And the MPs waved it through with no fucking question. Don't worry, it won't happen like that. The government won't immediately ban every political activist who damages property. That would risk a huge backlash. It's okay, the Secretary of State won't ban any groups at all. Until she wants to, Yvette. And then people will be arrested and they will be held without charge and questioned and held and questioned for 7 days without charge and measured by force, photographed by force, swabbed, sampled, fingerprinted by force, questioned. Some of the people will be denied access to a solicitor for 2 days because that's in the legislation, and no one will be informed where they are because that's in the legislation. And some children will be arrested and their parents won't be told for 2 days where they are. And they sometimes only be allowed to see each other in the presence of a uniformed officer not below the rank of inspector. And that's a lot of this was like, I read the whole terrorist legislation and a lot of this was in the appendices at the back. So there's some little asterisks there where it's like, oh, you can only have your kids taken off there for two days in certain circumstances. And I looked up what those circumstances are, and the circumstances are when it is in the interest of the investigation of crime. So that's, yes, you're in a fucking police station, they can take your kids off you for 2 days. Mr. Straw, I don't care if some senior police officer decides that it's in the interest of crime prevention. I don't see how you can justify that. If a person commits murder or criminal damage, Mr. Straw, the ordinary criminal law can deal with it. So why create additional offences of speaking, thinking, possessing information, wearing clothes or T-shirts? You've acquired the power to crush political dissent, Mr. Straw. Why do you need it? Should I trust you not to misuse it? This makes me scared, Mr. Straw. It makes me terrified. So, this is why I spend all my time drawing pictures of Regency England, guys, okay? Because it's fucking scary out there. I'm deeply hopeful that my book about Jane Austen, which is a really damn good graphic biography, will in some way make me rich, because I'd like have this eternal optimism where I'm like, this time next year, Rodney, I'll be a millionaire, mate. Okay. So I really want this to be successful. And here I am just indoctrinating you all with like terrorism and roads protest stories so that I can incidentally mention Jane Austen, guys. Jane Austen. Right. Okay. This is my website, and here are all my handles. I am Cartoon Kate on the internet. From what I can be, what's there to do with it? Generally, I'm too busy drawing cartoons. Okay, thank you very much for coming to my talk.